Welcome back to another edition of Gary's Record Collection. Today we're going back down into the bootleg vinyl archives. Led Zeppelin, quite possibly their best concert ever. Concerts went from 1968 to 1980. This comes from June 21st, 1977 at the Los Angeles Forum, and it's called Listen to This, Eddie. Who's Eddie? That's been debated for years. There's two theories. One is that it's Eddie Van Halen, who had apparently some derogatory comments made about Jimmy Page back then. Jimmy Page can't play. Well, you listen to this concert and say, yeah, he can. The other Eddie possibility was Eddie Kramer, the engineer at Atlantic Records, who did a lot of the recording of the Led Zeppelin albums. Sounds like this, like you should give this a listen because this is awesome. So I got this record back in the late 80s, and here it is. This is actually picture disc bootlegs that I got from a record convention that I went to. Parts 1 and 2. This is on the Rock Solid label. Mine is, there were only 375 copies made of these. I have number 178 or 180 of part 1 and 178 of part 2. Now it's a 3-hour concert, so it couldn't fit on the two albums. So these albums only have the first, hour and 15 minutes or so. Goes through 10 Years Gone, and there was a lot more on that at that concert. After a while, when CDs started to come out, I started picking up the CDs, and I got a little more taste of this with something called On the Whispering Wind. This is a two CD set, which has a lot of the show, but not everything. Especially, there's a lot of cuts made in the second half of the show. But for the whole thing, you got these CDs called Listen to This, Eddie. 3 CDs on the Silver Rarities label that came out in the late 80s, early 90s. This is incredible. And then the tapes, of course, have been circulating on the internet for a long time now. Taped by legendary taper Mike Millard. He's the guy who had the wheelchair rig. He put his deck underneath it and got up close, got into preferred seating because of the wheelchair, and made excellent recordings. How excellent? The recording is outstanding. The performance is outstanding. So much so that when it came to Led Zeppelin putting out the official DVD set in 2003, one of the menus includes the audio from this concert, the first song, which is The Song Remains the Same. Let's check it out. And the drumming. Now, the film that you're looking at is actually from Birmingham, 1977. There were a lot of 8mm films made, and with The Song Remains the Same being the first song of the concert, a lot of people started recording right away, filming. So this video, even though it has the audio from June 21st, the video is made up of a lot of different sources. It'll switch out here. The Birmingham 8mm ran about 3 minutes. I think they were 3-minute reels. There's some 8mm video from film, actually, from New York, Madison Square Garden. It's unbelievable. Now, this is the thing. It's like, this is the first song in the concert. It's like, what are you going to do when you've got 3 hours to go? It's like, what are you going to do now, to keep that momentum going? Well, I'll tell you what they did. They busted out a bunch of great songs. Song Remains the Same went into a Rover, the intro from the Rover into Sick Again. Then they did Nobody's Fault But Mine. And then after that, they got back into some more familiar territory with Over the Hills and Far Away, and the Forum crowd went nuts for this, and the band fed off it. Here's a sample of going into the guitar solo. Page is playing with a little bit of a delay, so every time he hits a note, it's repeated a half a second later. And listen to this, where he suspends time. That stuff is great. Coming out of Over Hills and Far Away, they went into Since I've Been Loving You, and then a showpiece for the night, a centerpiece really, No Quarter, half an hour at the LA Forum. By this time in the tour, it had become a formula, so it was the first part of the song, then John Paul Jones would play piano, really a concerto, an instrumental, then they would go into a 12-bar blues, that would end, and then they would go into the actual jam of No Quarters, more like what you might remember from the Houses of the Holy album, although they stretched it out like crazy, and then at the end, come back to the last half of the song. No Quarter was followed by 10 Years Gone. 10 Years Gone had not been played live, even though it came out in 1975 on Physical Graffiti. 77 was the first tour that they played it. And they only played it after that in 1979 at both Copenhagen warm-up shows and at the Nebworth Festival. It was gone after that. 10 Years Gone in 77, John Paul Jones started off the tour by playing acoustic guitar with bass pedals. And by the time the tour got to Los Angeles, actually when the second leg started in Birmingham on the 18th, here comes John Paul Jones with a triple neck guitar and the bass pedals. So very multi-talented person. And the sound becomes very expansive with all of those instruments. This is the last portion of 10 Years Gone from LA 6/21/77. Again, Robert Plant wrapping up the lyrics and has a little octave thing going on there on the effects. Here's Jimmy Page, though. He wants to go on all night long, it sounds like. He's not wrapping this song up anytime soon. Beautiful, just beautiful. And so now we're only like an hour and 15 into the concert. We've got 2 hours to go. After 10 Years Gone, they go into an acoustic set, The Battle of Evermore, Going to California, Black Country Woman, Barnyard Stomp. Then Jimmy Page sits down in center stage, one spotlight on him, the band is off to the side, and he does his thing with White Summer and Black Mountain Side. White Summer was the old Yardbird song, and Black Mountain Side off the first Led Zeppelin album. And again, there was no internet back then, and there were no discussion boards or anything, so there was no trading of set lists. If you might have found out maybe a month later if somebody wrote you a letter and said, hey man, this is what they played. If you were really lucky, maybe you got a phone call from somebody who went to the show. So nobody's expecting, they don't know what to expect. So here comes White Summer and Black Mountain Side at the very end, and just listen to this. So Kashmir out of White Summer, Black Mountain Side. Again, the audience has no idea that it's coming, and they're just shocked beyond all belief. That was the way that song would be presented all the way through 1980. It was always the Jimmy Page guitar solo of White Summer, Black Mountain Side into Kashmir. They did not deviate from that formula all the way to the end in July 7th, 1980 in Berlin. Well, after Kashmir, it's time for a little rest for the band, except for John Bonham. He gets to play his drum solo, but the problem here is he had a little piece of broken equipment. Let's listen to Robert Plant spiel a little bit while John Bonham gets ready.
Right now, the man who fought against the elements, the man...
The audience is restless. Somebody wants a beer.
The man who doesn't get out of bed. The man who hasn't got a cymbal. The man who's having a chat with his man who knows the man who tunes Jimmy's guitar, who comes from Scotland and doesn't know the man they call Tim.
Monty Python?
But does know Audrey from Dallas. Thank you.
Audrey from Dallas was a groupie, a girlfriend of Robert Plant on the side on the American tours.
The man who now learns how to construct his own drum kit. The man who's not very professional. Wait a bitch. The man who said he could go back to a building site any time, and we all agreed. The man who's holding up the show. The rhinestone cowgirl. Come on, Winston, get on with it. That's what the Quaalude stagger is.
Oh. Welcome to 1977, the Quaalude stagger.
The man who played the Los Angeles Aztecs and beat them 10-1 by himself.
Audience getting a little restless.
The man who one wonders, is he worth waiting for? And doesn't really realize there's a curfew here. A childhood friend. A man
Uh-oh.
who many people want
Is he
to
ready?
see. Never heard of him. John Bonham, over the top!
So a little out on the tiles action, and then goes into the drum solo for Moby Dick, another 1977 pairing of the two songs. And it would only be like that. Actually, 77 was the last year that there was a drum solo. They dropped it in 1979. The only remnant of that was a little bit of John Bonham timpani before in the evening, but even then it was only maybe a minute or so. So there were no 30-minute drum solos. This actual drum solo was actually only about 16 minutes long this night, but they did stretch out. Now, you may have heard when the audience was restless, one guy screaming out for Heartbreaker. He was doing that the entire concert. You would just hear him all the time. Heartbreaker! It was like 3 distinct syllables. And so here we come out of Moby Dick, and the gentleman in the whatever row, he got his wish. And so that guy was really happy, I'm sure, screaming Heartbreaker the whole night. And then they must have heard him, because then they played it, because they did not play that every night on the tour. The set list was pretty standard all the way through with very minor modifications. So throwing in Heartbreaker was a complete surprise for everybody. After that, it was time for Jimmy Page again, another solo spotlight. He's playing the theremin, the violin, bow. And that was from the Dazed and Confused portion, but they weren't playing Dazed and Confused in 77. Instead, they came out of that with one of their songs from Presence, another epic, Achilles' Last Stand. And so another epic, Achilles' Last Stand, added to the repertoire in 77. They played it in 79 and 1980, except surprisingly, for the last show in Berlin, July 1980. They didn't play it. They dropped it for some reason. No idea why. Page would play that later on a Lake Placid Les Paul, which looks stunning on the videos that we've seen from 79 and the films from 80. Well, you're 2 hours and some odd and change into the concert, and it's the last song of the night of the set list. What is it? Of course, it's Stairway to Heaven. We're going to skip ahead to the guitar solo because there's a lot going on here it's quite interesting. So let's take a listen. Just things like that little stopping for doing a little 4-beat thing where you just come to a complete halt. The audience is like, what's going on here? But then they pick it up and do it like 3 more times, and it just creates this little audience expectation. It's like a bonus for the audience. And what a great concert. That was the followed by the encore of Whole Lotta Love and Rock and Roll, Whole Lotta Love. It was only the very first part of the song, and then they dovetailed right into Rock and Roll. What a great concert. June 21st, 1977. It's on YouTube. So if you got, an extra 3 hours to spare and you want to listen to something good, maybe it's boring at work and you need to plug in because everybody around you is making a lot of noise, you can't go wrong with this. Listen to this, Eddie. Glad to have it on vinyl. Glad to have the tapes. And actually, we believe there's probably 3 sources of tapes. So Mike Millard taped one. Then a few years ago, another tape came out, which was titled "Listen to This, Erik." Apparently, somebody named Erik had taped the show, put it away because he had heard the Mike Millard version. It's like, well, my tape's doesn't sound like that. That's not good enough. Zeppelin collectors were like, oh, wait a minute, let's hear the tape. And you hear the tape, and it's recorded a little farther back from where Mike Millard was way up front, but you get more of that audience sound, and the sound from the band is still great. So it's interesting to listen to the two. Both of those are on YouTube. And there was another source that was used many years ago to fill in the patches between tape flips, primarily during 10 Years Gone. So there's at least 3 tape sources out there. But you can't go wrong. Listen to this, Eddie. June 21st, 1977. Gosh, it'd be great to hear what the soundboard tape sounds like. And you wonder, is it going to be great? Or is it going to just sound kind of bland because there's not that audience energy? I would love to be able to find out and report back to you. In the meantime, we'll see you next time on Gary's Record Collection.